Welcome to Hive Mind. I'm going to break down my latest report on the U.S. Virgin Islands lawsuit against the Epstein Estate and hidden secrets of the island. I'm going to provide a little bit of background as to the corruption in the U.S. Virgin Islands, as well as some of the details of the lawsuit and what I think that may mean as far as revealing some hidden secrets of the island. So on January 15th, 2020, the Attorney General of the U.S. Virgin Islands, Denise George, announced a lawsuit against the estate of Jeffrey Epstein. The civil suit is seeking to seize both Little St. James and Great St. James, as well as other assets from various shell corporations and foundations connected to the criminal activity that took place in the Virgin Islands.
Soon after I took office in April of 2009, I was inundated with inquiries from the local and national media regarding alleged criminal activity by Jeffrey Epstein in the U.S. Virgin Islands. All seemed secondhand and unverified information at the time, and I have no knowledge, even now, with respect to whether or not there had been any criminal complaints filed with local or federal law enforcement. However, I wanted to look into it, and I did not want to remain complacent because the claims and what I heard and the allegations were so serious and really shocking to the conscience of many of us here. So what I did is I authorized an investigation into Jeffrey Epstein, who was a resident of the U.S. Virgin Islands and a registered sex offender with my office. As a result of the findings of my investigation, today I filed in the Superior Court of the Virgin Islands a civil lawsuit on behalf of the government of the Virgin Islands against the estate of Jeffrey Epstein and 6 associated Virgin Islands entities through which Jeffrey Epstein carried out an expansive scheme of human trafficking and sexual abuse of young women and underage girls right here in the Virgin Islands.
Now, this Attorney General, Denise George, she's relatively new to her position. She was appointed as AG by the newly elected governor of the U.S. Virgin Islands, Albert Bryan, who took office in January of 2019. Governor Bryan appointed Denise George around April of 2019 to take on this role as AG, with the task of rooting out corruption and restoring confidence among the people. The Virgin Islands has a sordid history of government corruption. For example, in August of 2018, a former Virgin Islands Senator, Wayne A.G. James, was convicted of 2 counts of wire fraud and 1 count of theft of federal program funds. Wayne James abused his trusted position as a senator for the people of the U.S. Virgin Islands by stealing tens of thousands of taxpayer dollars to pay his own campaign and personal expenses. This was a remark made by the Assistant Attorney General Benskowski. In another example of U.S. Virgin Islands corruption, an official, Violet Ann Golden, has been indicted just this year for embezzling government funds while serving as a chairman of the Virgin Islands Casino Control Commission. Now, there has been a lot of press on the Trump administration's handling of the federal disaster relief funds for Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands. Concerns by the Trump administration over the mishandling of federal disaster relief funds delayed the funding for Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands, which was intended to be used for repairs since the devastation of the 2017 hurricanes Irma and Maria. More oversight was needed of the federal funding of more than $8 billion for disaster relief, which is allocated through HUD under Ben Carson, before the administration could proceed with confidence that the funds were not going to be mismanaged. Now, the Trump administration's delay of this funding met harsh criticisms by the Democrats, as well as U.S. Virgin Islands officials, including this new governor, Albert Bryan, and the Congresswoman Stacey Plaskett. However, the administration's concerns over government corruption in the Virgin Islands and misappropriation of federal relief funds were not unfounded. In fact, in February of 2019, indictments were unsealed, charging 4 individuals with major disaster fraud targeting federal disaster assistance under FEMA. One of the individuals indicted had previously worked for an advisor of Governor Alejandro Garcia Padilla of Puerto Rico. And then on January 15th, the Trump administration did finally lift a hold on the Puerto Rican aid, and that is because now the administration has put into place a full financial monitoring team that is assembled and active, and they can move forward with confidence that these disaster recovery funds will reach those who actually need it the most. Only a day or two later, news broke about how Puerto Rican officials who were busy bashing Trump were also hiding aid from their citizens. One of the citizens discovered a giant warehouse filled with unused supplies. So the Trump administration's concerns over the corruption in the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico, as far as mishandling of aid, are not unfounded. The newly elected governor, Albert Bryan, has attempted to separate the activities of the U.S. Virgin Islands with those of Puerto Rico by stating, "While I understand the concerns for heightened scrutiny given the recent developments in Puerto Rico, there have been no improprieties in the Virgin Islands disaster recovery process and no discernible reason to couple the U.S. Virgin Islands with Puerto Rico in this matter. We are not Puerto Rico." Well, with only 1 year into this new governor's administration, it's unclear at this point if Bryan's statements will hold true. We need to wait and see. But it seems like the aid that Trump is giving the U.S. Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico is going to have some serious oversight, and it's no longer going to be used as a slush fund for these corrupt officials, which leads me to believe that they need another slush fund. This may be a motivation for this lawsuit against the Epstein Estate. While the new governor, Albert Bryan, has made strong statements about fighting corruption and restoring public confidence in their government, it is difficult to reconcile these statements with his numerous public appearances alongside the Clintons, as well as his participation as a panel speaker for the 2019 Clinton Global Initiative. Considering that both Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton have traveled on numerous occasions with the pedophile and child trafficker Jeffrey Epstein, and the fact that Epstein claimed to be co-founder of the Clinton Global Initiative, it does raise suspicions as to Governor Albert Bryan's commitment to rooting out corruption that takes place within the U.S. Virgin Islands. Governor Albert Bryan has made it clear that he intends to rebuild a defunct division of his Justice Department, the White Collar Crimes and Public Corruption Unit, under this new Attorney General, Denise George. The prior administration had completely dismantled it. AG George, who was appointed to her position around April of 2019, appears to have a solid background in prosecuting corruption as the former director of the White Collar Crime and Public Corruption Division. She also worked for the Port Authority, as well as co-authored the first Virgin Islands criminal child abuse and neglect statute while serving as a member of the Child Abuse Task Force. When AG George was sworn in, along with 11 others, Governor Bryan remarked, "You're selected because you were the group of people that I felt and that my team felt could bring change to the Virgin Islands." So let's see if that's what Denise George brings. I hope she does, but I'm skeptical. When Denise George took her new position, she explained she received a lot of inquiries about the criminal activity going on at Little St. James. And she was asked how Epstein's flagrant criminal conduct in the Virgin Islands went undetected for so long, and if she was alarmed by this. And she stated she was alarmed and outraged.
Obviously, there were people seeing this kind of activity, this trafficking operation, that lots of signs that it was going on. Are you not, as an agent of the law in the Virgin Islands, alarmed that he was able to conduct this on such a large extent for such an extended period of time without being detected.
Yeah, alarmed and outraged, but I really want to say also, I cannot speak for what happened in the past, in previous administrations. This is a new administration, and I came on in April. I don't know all that happened in the past, but what I do know is even if people are talking about, they believe these things are happening or discussing suspicions about what is going on, unless there's some kind of report or something, some valid report to law enforcement, which I understand there had been no reports, criminal reports or criminal complaints to law enforcement to trigger any investigation.
I don't know how someone who was a director of a white collar crime unit, part of a child abuse task force, part of the Port Authority, how someone with her background was alarmed and outraged that criminal activity went on at Epstein Island for so long. I find it implausible that she was not aware of this. However, I am of the opinion that she does actually want to seek justice here, that she does care about rooting out this corruption. As for the administration that she works for, I'm not so convinced. Following the arrest of Jeffrey Epstein, allegations emerged of corruption within the U.S. Virgin Islands, enabling Epstein's operation to continue for years. U.S. Virgin Islands Senator Oakland Benta, who previously served as St. Croix Chief of Police, stated there is widespread corruption within the territory that needs to be addressed and looked at with fresh eyes, adding, Epstein had people on his payroll. One of those people certainly includes the wife of the former U.S. Virgin Islands governor, Cecile DeJong, who remained employed under Epstein's financial trust company even recently. Governor John DeJong, who was caught in his own bribery scandal, skated charges under Eric Holder's Justice Department. Perhaps this is why the previous U.S. Virgin Islands administration didn't launch an investigation or bring charges against Epstein sooner. With the death of Epstein, it seems these elected officials may no longer be, as Oakland Benta put it, on Epstein's payroll. With the revamp of the U.S. Virgin Islands Justice Department, including the appointment of Denise George, an investigation into the crimes committed by Epstein and his associates in the U.S. Virgin Islands began. AG George filed the suit on January 15, 2020, and held a subsequent press conference on the matter. Questions as to what the suit may seek to accomplish have arisen since Epstein is now deceased, as well as if any of the victims will receive compensation. AG George stated this.
Are the victims that you are interviewing, the girls and women who are part of this suit, are they going to get any of the money, any of the compensation that you might be able to get through this lawsuit?
It is a forfeiture action that's available to the government. However, under that statute, we are able to request that the court allow us to compensate victims for some of the compensation that we would receive.
In light of the numerous examples of government corruption and mishandling of funds in the Virgin Islands, undoubtedly victims as well as the general public remain skeptical as to whether or not any of the victims will receive compensation through this suit. Now, the primary benefit of this lawsuit may be that victims may receive some compensation. But secondarily, this lawsuit, the benefit is that it may bring to light new information about Epstein and the island. During the press conference, AG George was asked this.
Investigators said that Jeffrey Epstein, while he was alive, told them that they could only come as far as the dock at Little St. James because that represented his front door. Is it possible that victims of Jeffrey Epstein may still be living on Little St. James at this time? And is there anything in this investigation that you foresee where investigators may be able to go past the front door at Little St. James and, speak to these people who may be subject to the benefits of this lawsuit?
Did you hear that? A reporter actually asked the AG if some of Epstein's victims were still living on the island. In captivity? I don't know. Her response was this.
Well, as I said, I cannot discuss the details of the investigation, and it is indeed ongoing. And that's about what I can say. But anything is possible with an investigation based on the evidence.
Now, it seems implausible that any of Epstein's remaining victims would still be living on the island. However, it appears that through the process of discovery, this investigation may lead to a search of the island. In fact, allegations 65 through 69 of the complaint state that Epstein repeatedly defied DPNR regulations for construction of additional barriers to prevent those held involuntarily on Little St. James from escaping or obtaining help from others. The complaint goes on to explain that Epstein Enterprise continues to attempt to prevent or limit DPNR authorities from conducting random inspections of Little St. James and Great St. James necessary to comply with Virgin Islands law. Now, logic dictates that as part of the discovery process, investigators must analyze the island for any illegal structures or barriers constructed in order to assess damages which, if the case is won, would be awarded to the U.S. Virgin Islands. Now, you know where I'm going with this. In pursuit of their investigation of illegal structures on the island, perhaps we may finally have proof of the long suspected subterranean structures beneath Epstein's island. Citizen researchers and journalists have reported on this possibility and provided a treasure trove of circumstantial evidence to support the theory, including still shots of drone footage of what appear to be entrances leading to an enclosure dug into Little St. James. Furthermore, drone footage of Little St. James has revealed industrial-sized ventilation systems partially dug into the hill, which would support air ventilation for a significantly large structure beneath the island. Now, here is where we dive into some of the darker conspiracy theories of Epstein's Island, which I personally believe. Citizen journalists and researchers uncovered this connection between Rachel Chandler and Bill Clinton, as well as a connection between Rachel Chandler and MC2 modeling agency, from which Epstein reportedly recruited many of his victims. Now, the complaint filed by the U.S. Virgin Islands describes a trafficking pyramid scheme in which the victims were forced to recruit new victims. Based on circumstantial evidence, it appears that this Rachel Chandler may have been a recruiter. Chandler is known to have traveled in elite circles of Hollywood A-listers, including Paris Hilton, Eminem, and many others. But her social media posts are quite disturbing, and if you scour them, it's very revealing. One of the many, many disturbing images from her social media posts is shown here. Of course, this is only speculation, but there is a reasonably legitimate theory that this photo may have been taken of security cameras, which we know Epstein had everywhere, but these may be cameras which were monitoring the underground facility at Epstein Island. Also, in what appears to be an attempt to cover up evidence, it was reported that Epstein ordered a $50,000 cement truck in November of 2018 to be delivered to the island, sparking suspicions that the supposed subterranean structure at Epstein Island may have been partially filled with cement. With all of this circumstantial evidence plus more, many believe there is in fact an underground facility at Epstein Island, and if DPNR is allowed to go to the island and inspect it for illegal structures, we may finally get proof of this. The complaint also refers to a computerized list of underage girls who were in or proximate to the Virgin Islands and able to be transported to Epstein's residence at Little St. James. Again, logic dictates that in the course of the discovery process, investigators may obtain access to the computers which appear to have been seized by the FBI during a raid on the island in August of 2019. Though we're in the early stages of this investigation overseen by the U.S. Virgin Islands Attorney General's office, It seems that there is a potential, at least, for more information to come to light in the near future as to the contents of the computers seized from the island, as well as the possible subterranean structures beneath the island, which many believe may have, as the complaint alludes, prevented those held involuntarily on Little St. James from escaping or obtaining help from others. As for the victims receiving compensation for their suffering through this lawsuit, well, let's hope for the sake of the two victims referenced in this lawsuit who tried to escape the island, and many others like them, that the U.S. Virgin Islands is finally committed to cleaning out the government corruption and mishandling of government funds once and for all. We'll have to wait and see, but I'm not holding my breath. That concludes this report on the U.S. Virgin Islands lawsuit against the Epstein Estate and hidden secrets of the island. Look out for more reports like this. And if you like it, please share, like, subscribe, and hit that bell. We'll see you back next time, right here on Hive Mind.